Tonight, and of course, Brother Cable is not here, and we are praying for him. He's been having the treatments there, dealing with his eye and face issue there, and the I don't know what you call it, disease, I guess.
Reps.
All right, that right there, and so he's had a week. He's having a week of treatments, and Mrs. Cable mentioned that he's doing really well with the treatments. It just wears you out. 3 hours of sitting there getting the treatments, all right, wears you out. So anyway, so we're thankful for him and thankful for Brother Aubin stepping in and playing our first Christmas song of the year. Did you guys notice that? Born to Die, all right? And so anyway, I was excited. Yesterday, or the day before, I started copying out all the Christmas songs and all the different songbooks and getting it ready for our December services. And so we're going to have some Christmas songs, and so we're excited about that. It's December, so we can legally sing Christmas songs. So we're excited about that. All right, let's take our prayer pages. Who needs a prayer page tonight? Anybody? Anybody need a prayer card? Prayer card. All right. And if you have a prayer card that needs to be picked up, just we got one. Guys right up here. All right, you can finish that out and raise your hand, guys, right up here. All right, and we will do that. On the first page, let's continue to pray for our election there. And so I almost can't wait till that one's off the prayer page there, but pray they get that thing figured out there. And then under health needs, family and friends, we'll continue to pray for Summer Tomby. And then the next one there, my wife's uncle, and he's in Canada. He had to go to the hospital, and he's on actually a respirator and in an induced coma. So he's got a pretty bad case of it. So if you would keep him in prayer, his name is Jose. And if you could keep him in prayer, and I think the family there has it, but I think he's the one that's got the real bad case of it. And then my wife's also got a friend whose 7-month-old granddaughter has it. And so if you could pray there for that baby as well. And then Brother Bruner and his dad. And Brother Bruner texted today and asked to be put on perching. He actually tested negative, but he's lost his sense of smell and his sense of taste, which are both pretty kind of earmark symptoms for COVID. So they're thinking it's probably a false negative test. But anyway, so keep him in prayer there. He's actually said he doesn't have any of the other bad symptoms. It's just no smell and no taste. And so I told him, I said, well, I guess if you're going to pick symptoms, those aren't too bad compared to all the rest of them. But anyway, I guess until I went to drink my coffee, then I would probably not like that no taste symptom there. But pray for him, and he's watching there. I'm not joking about your COVID, all right? But anyway, pray for him and pray for his dad especially. His dad has some other medical issues, and so serious prayer there. On the back page, a couple of new requests. Actually, this one's an old one. I don't think it's on here anymore, but we were praying for a while for my wife's friend Tennille, who had a knee replaced, and she's having a lot of pain with the new knee that she got. And so if you could just pray that they can figure out that and figure out what to do there. And then also, if you could write down Dottie Klein, and that is a friend of Miss Wanda's, and she has COVID and pneumonia and is on a respirator at home. So pray for that. A serious case as well there. So we need to pray for that. And then Brother Van is asking prayer for himself here. He's asking for God's grace on an upcoming accounting exams. And so anyway, pray for tests and exams. The students, you should be praying for that, all right? You know what it's like to pray for that. So pray for him there with that. And then Miss Vicki is asking prayer for traveling mercies. And she'll be gone for, looks like a couple of weeks there. And so pray for her going to Texas. All right. And so thank the Lord for that opportunity as long as she comes back. And so, amen. All right. And then also she's praying for her daughter-in-law, Samantha Estes, and she has COVID.
She
So,
is back out today, or tonight, like an hour and a half ago.
all right. So pray for her, and she was the one that.
No, I got two Samanthas. I got a daughter and daughter-in-law with the same first
Oh,
name.
okay. All right. So pray for that, and then also her neighbor Avalon, and just. She just health.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that is all. Any other prayer cards? All right. And then our student of the week is Faith Schmoyer. And, so they're all right. Pray for them. And our staff of the week is Mrs. Gervis. Thank the Lord for her work. And then our deacon of the week, all right? He's not here, so you won't know, all right? He's watching our live stream. Our deacon of the week is Dave Fitz. Thank the Lord for him. And Fitz called me Sunday. He was working on a parking lot, but he said, I got a little bit of a sniffle, and I just want to play it safe. And so he said, I'll be watching on live stream tonight. And so thank the Lord for him. And then our pastor of the week is Pastor Dan Callahan, First Baptist Church, Yuba City. Thank the Lord for Brother Callahan, our neighbor right to the north there. And then our missionary of the week is the Lowe family to the Bahamas. And this is their prayer letter from September and October. It says, Dear prayer warriors, thank you for praying for Ethan's arm. He has seen tremendous progress and has finished all his physical therapy. The wound is healed, and he has a pretty cool scar to show off to his friends. The Bahamas continues to be plagued with the coronavirus. Our national infection numbers are listed as one of the highest in the world per capita. We are still subject to lockdowns, and it has caused us to have to switch our services back to online only. In the beginning of October, Heather and Ethan started to show symptoms for COVID. Heather was tested, and the test came back positive. A few days later, Aiden and I also started to have symptoms. The boys bounced back fairly quickly, and Ethan never showed any symptoms. Heather and I took a couple of weeks, and we are still easily fatigued, and I'm having some mild breathing issues. With the infection rate so high, we have had many of our church people that have been sick. We have had 4 families in the past 2 weeks have someone die with COVID. Most recent was one of our church members' mothers. She was 52 years old and had no pre-existing conditions. The health care here is extremely poor. The hospital is so overrun that Samaritan's Purse came over to assist with some of the emergency field hospitals to house some of the patients. Please continue to pray for the Bahamas. The government needs to open up the economy. Most Bahamians work in some sort of tourism-based industry. With the country shut down, there are no tourists coming to the islands. All of the hotels are closed with a hope to have them open in a limited fashion before the end of the year. Please pray for our ministry. As you can imagine, it has been quite challenging to minister during the lockdown periods. The government just announced yesterday that the 24-hour lockdown on Sunday was going to be changed to a lockdown that would begin at 5 p.m. This is a blessing, as it will give us a chance to hold in-person services once again. Please also know that our family is praying for you. We understand the challenges that you are also facing during these unprecedented days. We are thankful for your faithfulness to continue to reach your communities with the gospel and for your faithfulness to the cause of world evangelism. Prayer requests, pray for our church people who have lost their jobs. Pray for the church that they stay engaged during the season of online ministry. Pray for our healing from COVID. Pray for Audrey as she's back in Bible college. And pray for our continued protection. And so a lot of needs there. And, as you think about that, we definitely have some blessings in that we have not had. And, I'm not saying that we won't have, but we have not had big issues from this in our church family. And that ought to be something we thank the Lord for. And, I pray covering over us all the time. Ask God to keep us protected, keep us safe. and I hope that you will as well. I don't know about you, but I don't want that to come through our church. And so let's just continue to keep that in prayer. And I was also thankful that there was some religious liberty wins this week in the Supreme Court in regards to New York, dealing with in-person services. And so we thank the Lord for that. And so let's continue to pray that works in our favor. I know LA, they've had so much problems with LA, and they just went into some lockdowns, but they completely wrote out churches out of it. They exempted churches out of it. And so because of the Supreme Court case. And so we thank the Lord for that. Let's pray that continues to keep with that, right? All right, let's take a few minutes and just go to prayer there over these things, and we'll come back to our study tonight.
Thank you for your celebrate going on went well and celebrate this going well for presidency. Just please help Ultra President Lord. Thank you for everything that's generated from all rest of the needs. Lord, I miss just
We'll have our ushers come. Lydia, I was hoping that one of you guys were going to be playing tonight, so amen. I'm excited about these young folks playing, and I called out Lydia and Anna and David in chapel today. They're ones that play. I said, so we need the real young ones to really get good playing, because then they'll be in our church for quite a while. You know, Timmy, he plays, but he's going to be off to college. But anyway, thank the Lord for these guys. Roman, why don't you come and lead some prayer tonight?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you that we get to be here and worship you. And please bless this offering. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Oh, it's good to have some Christmas music there too as well. Take your Bibles and turn to Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2. And of course, make sure you do look over the bulletin. This week's bulletin has a lot of our Christmas schedule, and some of that starts this Friday, and a lot of things starting there. And of course, the one affecting all our church starts this Friday. And if you are planning on participating in that, maybe if you could let us know, let Mrs. Auburn know, since she's the secretary, I'll put it on her, and just try to let us know. We just want to kind of get an idea of how many people are participating in that Christmas event. All right, Matthew chapter number 2, and we've been doing our character study. Good to have John here tonight, John Fitz, and I saw you slipped in there. Amen. And we've been doing our character study, and I was in the Old Testament, just kind of working our way through, but it's December, and I thought, I'm going to do some of the characters of the Christmas story, kind of get us ready for Christmas. And for some of you, you've been here long enough, you've probably heard a little bit of some of this stuff, but tonight I want to talk about probably one of my favorite participants, I guess you would say, in the Christmas story. I really like these guys, and that is the wise men. We're going to talk about the wise men tonight as our Bible characters, and maybe a couple of things that maybe you didn't think about before. I had a couple of pictures I was going to put up there, but Brother Rogers, I think somehow something from the Apple TV to the TVs must have been disconnected somehow. So I'm going to have to get the smart guys on it later on to figure out, but I cannot connect for some reason. So anyway, I'm telling you that because I'm going to forget otherwise. But Matthew chapter 2, verse number 1, it says that, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen a star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod the king heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privately called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. All right. And so we see here the wise men. And notice, first of all, in verse number 1, it says that they were wise men from the east. All right. So these are guys that traveled to see Jesus. They were not part of Israel. They were not in the land. They had traveled probably from Babylon, probably from that region. Sometimes some people think maybe as far as China, all right, or India. I think probably from Babylon. In fact, if you will, turn to Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. I think they came from Babylon, partly because the terminology of wise men are used in Babylon. But notice in Daniel chapter 2, and of course keep Matthew, we'll come back to Matthew. But look at verse number 27, Daniel chapter 2, verse 27. It says, Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded, cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers show unto the king? So we see that term wise men. In fact, Daniel was put in with that group of wise men. These were men that understood science. And that's what the Bible says in Daniel chapter 1, that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, they were put in there. They were men of science. And they were, in some cases, astrologers, in some cases, magicians and things like that. So they weren't all good, all right? But there was some of that. Look at Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. It is interesting that Daniel later on was actually put in charge of this group. Look at Daniel chapter 5 and verse number 11. Daniel chapter 5, verse number 11. This is, of course, when the big hand comes on the wall and writes on Belshazzar's throne room wall there, and they can't interpret what what is being said there. And the old queen comes in, and she says, "There is a guy who can read that." And verse number 11, notice it says, "There is a man in thy kingdom in whom the spirit of the holy gods is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers." All right. And so the old queen, obviously not a Christian here, she's talking about the holy gods and whatnot. But she says, look, your dad, Nebuchadnezzar, he made this guy, Daniel, in charge of these guys. Why? Daniel was a man of science. Daniel was a man of understanding. And Daniel, by the way, also was able to interpret the king's dreams, of course, and that helped him with that. So we see that these guys were educated men. They were men that were educated. These guys were probably almost like kings in a sense. In fact, we have that the hymn, "We Three Kings of Orient Are." All right. These guys were rich guys. By the way, the song "We Three Kings," we don't know that there were three. All right. The assumption is that there were three gifts, and that means there were three wise men. But probably there were not three of them. This is during a time when travel was very dangerous. These guys probably came in quite a large entourage, and there was probably quite a few of them. All right. And so nonetheless, these guys came from afar, and they were also educated. They're called the wise men. And of course, they're called the wise men because these are, you might say, the king's go-to guys. But could I say that they were wise for other reasons? And I want to look at a couple of those reasons tonight. And you know what? If you want to be wise, you might follow their example here. Could I say, first of all, I believe they were wise because I believe they actually searched the scriptures. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But I think that they did have access to some of the scriptures. Amen. All right. They are coming looking for the Messiah, which meant they must have known about it. And they must have known about where he was going to be. They had some of that idea. They did not know everything. They did come asking where he was born, so they did not know all the information. But they did act upon the information that they knew. First of all, could I say that they were looking for Christ at the right time? Turn to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. And I'm showing you Daniel because remember, Daniel, of course, he was the master of these wise men. And by the way, he lived and died in Babylon. You might say the status or the legacy of Daniel probably continued to live on in Babylon for hundreds of years after. I mean, after all, you're talking about a guy who interpreted several dreams for several different kings. Do you think he made it in the history books? Probably so, all right? And people probably followed him. And his book, by the way, probably was still in Babylon as well. Do you know Daniel is one of the only books in the Bible that's written in a different language other than Hebrew and Greek? The Old Testament's generally written in Hebrew. The New Testament's generally written in Greek. But the book of Daniel, right in the middle, there is the middle section of Daniel is actually written in a different language, Aramaic or Syriac, which would have been the language spoken in Babylon. And so it's kind of interesting there. This book was probably read by these guys. And one of the things that this book has in it is the prophecy about when Jesus would come to earth. Notice Daniel chapter 9. Verse 24, this is a prophecy that Daniel had given hundreds of years before. It says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and the prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So this is called Daniel's prophecy of 70 weeks. And what are these? Well, generally in America, we think about a week as how long? 7 days. 7 days. For the Jewish mind, though, their idea of a week could mean 7 days. It could also mean 7 years. They actually had what they called weeks of years. They had the Sabbath day, which was the 7th day, right? They also had a Sabbath year, which was the 7th year, which was really great. Can you imagine that? Work 6 years and take the 7th year off? And they didn't do that, by the way. They were so greedy that they worked the 7th year anyway. And you know what? They worked that way for 490 years, which is why God put them in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. He told them, he said, you didn't do the Sabbath year, and so because of that, I'm going to put you in captivity for every time you missed it. And they missed it 70 times, all right? And so they were in captivity for 70 years. And so Daniel gives this prophecy. And it actually outlines exactly when pretty much Messiah is going to be on earth. Notice it says in verse 26, it says, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And so there's a couple of years things here going on. The rebuilding of the city, it says, would happen after 7 weeks. All right, weeks of years. 7 times 7 is 49. By the way, did you know that when this prophecy was given, 49 years later, guess what? The city was rebuilt. Ezra came in and helped Nehemiah came in, rebuilt the wall. It took about 49 years to get everything done, but that was fulfilled. By the way, 62 weeks after that, all right, which is 434 years if you do the math, all right, was about the time in which Jesus Christ was on earth. It was around AD 30. All right, you can actually do the math. All right, 483 years times 360 days. And if you count up the days, you'd end up somewhere around April of AD 30, 31. And so what am I saying? I'm saying these wise men had the ability to know about the time that the Messiah would be on earth. And they were looking. They were looking for him. They searched the scriptures. Now, let's look back at Matthew, and I'm building something. So just stay with me here, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. Turn back to Matthew. I told you to keep your spot, and I lost my spot. Notice what they said again. Verse 1, now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born king of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. They said, we saw his star. Now, that's kind of interesting. What do you mean, his star? Well, that idea is found in the Bible as well. Hold your spot here and turn to Numbers chapter 24. Numbers chapter 24. The idea of the star and Messiah was found in scriptures. What am I saying? These guys probably had access to some scriptures, and they were actually reading them and saying, I wonder how this applies to me. And they probably were looking at it. In fact, this was probably passed down from Daniel's time, and saying, look, when it gets to be around this time, you guys need to start looking, because Messiah's got to be coming around this time. Notice Numbers chapter 24. This is a prophecy made by that wicked prophet Balaam. You believe that God can even use a bad guy? All right. Notice the prophecy. Look at verse 17. He said, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. That prophecy was about a star that would come and really announce, you might say, Messiah. It's kind of interesting. All right, they came looking for a star. Turn to Psalm 147. Psalm 147. I think they had a little bit more to go on than just that. These guys were wise men. And what did Daniel say about the wise men? Book of Daniel described the wise men as wise men, astrologers, magicians, soothsayers. It describes them as men of science. These were guys that looked at the stars. That's what they did. They looked at stars. That was part of what they did. I would say they probably knew something about stars. It is interesting. Look at Psalm 147. Look at verse 4. It says, he telleth the number of the stars. He calleth them all by their names. By the way, who knows the number of the stars?
God.
Right? The only one that knows the number is God, right? I mean, there's trillions out there. Like they say there's so many stars that every person on earth could own 1 trillion of them. All right? That's how many stars there are out there. All right, there's plenty. I think if you pay NASA a little bit of money, they'll even name a star after you. All right. But notice what the verse says, though. He says, he telleth the number of the stars, and he, who are we talking about? God, calleth them by their names. Did you get the idea that God knows the number of the stars, and God also named the stars? Is that what that verse says?
Yes.
He did. Look at Isaiah chapter 40. Isaiah chapter 40. Look at verse 26. Isaiah chapter 40, verse number 26. It says, lift up your eyes on high. Verse 26, Isaiah 40, verse 26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their hosts by number? He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Notice once again that phrase, he calleth them out by names. So it means God knows their names. But notice it also says he bringeth out their hosts by number. What does that mean? That means God put the stars in a certain order. And he says, you're first, you're second. He knows their number. He calls them out by number. Turn to Job chapter 9. Job chapter 9. If you'll stay with me, I know you might be thinking, well, why are we going so crazy on stars here? If you'll stay with me, I think you'll see something pretty neat and maybe something maybe you've not heard before unless you've been here 10 or 15 years ago, all right? I preached about this a while back. But Job chapter 9, look at verse number 8. It says, which alone spreadeth out the heavens, and treadeth upon the waves of the sea, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, the chambers of the south. How many have ever heard of Orion's belt? All right, how many can find Orion's belt? All right, you're smarter than me, all right? I'm not good at telling those constellations, but those are constellation names. Would it be safe to say that God named the stars and God named the constellations? The names are found in the Bible. And it says he named them. He put them up there. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Turn to Job chapter 38. Job chapter 38. Job chapter 38. You know, a lot of things that are in this world, the world does a good job of perverting good stuff. You ever notice that?
Yes, sir.
You know, we have a Bible, and the world does a good job sometimes of trying to water it down. We have churches, and or the world tries to water it down. You know, we have certain morality, and the world tries to water it down, tries to counterfeit it. This is something interesting. Don't throw stones at me here until you hear me out here. Verse 32, canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Now, Arcturus is a constellation. Mazzaroth is an old Hebrew word that means 12 signs. That's what it means. 12 signs. You ever go to the Chinese restaurant and you see that zodiac, right? Now, the Chinese have twisted things up a little bit. The Indians have twisted things up a little bit. But that idea of 12 signs is in the Bible, and it's right there. By the way, in the oldest book of the Bible, which is Job, most people think that's the oldest book in the Bible. And God is actually the one talking here, and he says, canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his seasons? He says, can you bring out the signs in their seasons? Can you order them that way? All right. What's he talking about? Well, you know, those 12 signs, those different constellations, they actually do tell a story. Now, not the one that the Chinese restaurant says, you know, where, you know, if you're you know, I don't know, a Libra, you're this attitude, and if you're you know, a Virgo, you're this way or whatever. And not that way. But it is pretty interesting if you actually look back at some of the old ancient Arabic names and the old ancient Hebrew names and the old ancient Latin names of these constellations, you'll see some pretty interesting things. And by the way, I think these were things that these guys who studied stars knew about. Turn to Psalm 19. Psalm 19. You know, before we had a Bible, there was a lot of time that went on in the world before the Bible was written. If you think about it, you know, I said the oldest book most people think is probably the book of Job. And then Moses compiled the book of Genesis through Deuteronomy. All right. Now, of course, Moses lived quite after the flood. So we're talking a couple of thousand years. We did not have any Bible at all on this earth. None. What did they use? Well, they had prophets, of course. But they did have a story. Look at Psalm 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God.
Amen.
And the firmament showeth his handiwork. We're talking about the stars. It says, day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. He's saying every night there's knowledge up there. You look up there and there's some knowledge up there. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Anybody from any language group can look up at the stars, and they all speak the same language, right? You look up and you see the pictures of the stars. It's not a verbal language, but there's knowledge up there that anybody from any language group can see. Now look at verse 4. Their line. This is the order that they're laid out in the sky. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In them, in what? The stars, hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. Now, a tabernacle is kind of like a dwelling place. That's what we call a tabernacle, like a tent. And he's describing the heavens. He's saying the heavens are out there, the constellations are out there, they have knowledge. And he says the sun travels through and tabernacles in these constellations. And really, if you watch astronomy, that's exactly what happens. As the earth rotates around, the world tilts in different ways. Even though we're actually going around the sun, it looks like in the sky, the sun is traveling through the different constellations throughout the year. It tabernacles in the sun. Look at verse 5, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. What's it saying? That the sun goes through a circuit, and it returns again. And you know, every year the sun goes through these different constellations and travels through them. What are these constellations? There were 48 original constellations, by the way. That's before NASA started adding a bunch and whatnot. You ever notice something about constellations, though, is that they don't actually look like what they're supposed to look like? Does that mean, yeah, I don't see a dragon up there, I mean, they said that this is a, guy with a club and a shield or whatever. I don't see it.